Welcome back to another great episode of All Can, No Can't. I'm your host, Jeff Luther. This is another solo episode. I have talked about my experience with sudden cardiac death, where I spent 8 minutes or so with no pulse, no breath. I've walked through that. I've got pretty vulnerable in that piece of my life and what it's meant to kind of build it back. And from that event, you would think there are all these huge lessons. And when I tell people my story, a lot of times people say, "Oh my gosh, you must be so grateful." I bet you look at life different, and you have all these things, and God has a plan for you. And I thought that too. I was always looking for this big, profound thing, like this miracle, and all this stuff to be grateful about. And of course, I'm grateful, but I will add that gratitude can be elusive. And I got a little bit lost in what I was searching for, that it had to be some big thing around death or dying and me helping people. And I have a lot of lessons right in front of me. There are 5 big things that I learned from dying. And one that I want to talk about today is asking deeper questions, and you get stronger connection. I learned that through this process. And I love people. I love to connect with people. I'm genuinely curious. So I really like to connect with people. And I've always said that I like to connect with people. One of the things that I learned from dying is if we want stronger connection, we have to ask deeper questions. So it was June of 2021 when this happened to me. And I was in a workout. I was working out at CrossFit. It was a partnered workout on a Saturday, June the 12th to be exact. And my partner was my 16-year-old son. And just to give you, kind of let you in on where I am. I'm doing wall balls. It's a partnered workout. I would do wall balls. He would do wall balls. I would do wall balls. He would do wall balls. Anyone that's ever done any high intensity interval training, HIIT training, you know that when you do a partnered workout, you work really close with your partner. You count each other's reps. You might count theirs, they count yours. You really know what's going on. But also, if you get a little bit ahead of your partner, you can really put a hurt on them. And I was a little bit ahead of him. I was doing well, and so then you kind of start driving that stake, or you're tightening the screws, right? So that's what I was doing to him. And then all of a sudden, I started feeling these rapid heart palpitations in my neck. Started getting faint. And ultimately, I had to just lie down. So as I'm lying down, the last thing I saw before the lights went out was my son. Saw his white Metcons walking towards me, and I was out. I knew I had to get up, and I just couldn't move. It was just like your brain tells you have to move, but you have no function. You can't control anything. It's like there's no hydraulic fluid. So I was out. About 8 or so minutes later, somebody turned the lights back on, and I was awake. Nothing huge in between, but I woke up. I didn't really realize what had happened. And I was kind of like, well, are we going to finish this workout? Like, what's the deal? That was a long 8 minutes for the folks that were there watching, and I'll explain what happened. So I pass out. All right. I died. That's what happened. My heart stopped working, and I'm on the ground, no pulse, no breath. And people start to panic, of course, call the coach over. The coach stops the music, and everybody's over trying to get me to. They elevate my feet. Somebody went and got ice. It's June in Charleston, South Carolina, and we're in a gym. The air conditioning's not running, and it's hot. So somebody's got my feet up, and they're slapping me, calling my name, trying to get me to. In the interim, I don't have a pulse that can be found, and I'm not breathing. So after about 4 minutes, someone thinks to go get the defibrillator, the AED that's there. So they grab the defibrillator, put the defibrillator on me, and after a minute or so of it tracking my trying to find a heart rhythm, there's no rhythm. It finally says rhythm found, initiate shock. Now keep in mind, they've been doing chest compressions on me this whole time. There was someone there that's certified in CPR, and they kind of got it together. So someone's on top of me doing chest compressions, and my son is watching all this. And I don't know if you've ever watched anyone actually get CPR or chest compressions, or someone work on someone in that capacity in a live environment. It's a pretty scary thing. So as this is going on, my son is watching, and in that first shock, they initiated shock, and I flatline. It gives an audible tone after that shock. So everybody kind of panicked, and my son is watching this, and as I heard it, he kind of freaked out. So somebody had to grab him, take him out of the gym. Another shock, and then finally I was brought back to life. And that's kind of what I told you. I just came to and was like, what's up? We gonna work out? So he witnessed this whole event, and I can imagine it being pretty traumatic. So life goes on. I go to the hospital. I get my diagnosis, pretty grim diagnosis, and then I have surgery. I get a subcutaneous ICD, internal cardiac defibrillator installed. So I've got this piece of equipment in my body. I had surgery, so I couldn't lift anything up for 30 days. But after that 30 days was up, he was pressuring me to go back to the gym. He wanted to see me go to the gym. And I didn't really realize it, but that was kind of part of how he was dealing with this trauma. So go back to the gym, and it happens again. Now this time my body pulled out of that bad rhythm, but it happened again. And he was there with me. He knew something was kind of amiss. I tried to hide it. You can't fool teenagers. So I tried to hide it, and he saw it. So he's really paranoid at this point, asking me what's wrong, asking me why I'm looking at my watch, my heart rate. And I didn't think much about it. So time continued to pass, and we would talk a little bit about the event. Like, I would say, hey man, are you okay? I'm sure that was traumatic. Are you all right? Yeah. Okay, good. And then I would ask, hey, do you want to talk to anybody about that? Do you want anything you want to work out? No, I'm good. Okay, great. And those were my questions. I didn't ask the hard questions. I didn't really know it at the time, but I didn't ask the hard questions, because if I asked the hard questions, then I'd have to face the hard answers. I hid in controlling what my answers would be. I'm asking a teenage boy if he's okay. What's he going to say? Yeah, that's what he's going to say. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm fine. Hey, do you want to go talk to a therapist? No, that's for crazy people, right? So I hid in controlling what the answers would be. I didn't ask the hard questions. I didn't want to hear that my son wasn't okay. I didn't want to hear that I had work to do that I wasn't equipped to perform. I didn't want to hear that my road to recovery was going to be even bumpier because my son had his own road to recovery too. I didn't want to hear those things. So I didn't ask those questions. Then, at the time, my son was wrestling. So he had wrestling meets to go to. That's where he was focusing his energy. And he's a hardcore at the time. He was a pretty intense CrossFitter as well. So we were at a wrestling meet. It was just him and me. It was out of town meet. And in the match that he was involved in, I would say, well, I'm just going to tell it factually. There's a way to make him sound really tough. I'm not going to do that. But he and this other kid were wrestling, and the other kid got his arm twisted up behind his back somehow. And they were both in an awkward position, and they both rolled. And the way they rolled, their weight forced them over. There was no way to stop it. But as they rolled over, that kid's arm broke. And it broke. It was hyperextension at his elbow, and went all the way back where his elbow was almost touching his shoulder. Or I'm sorry, his wrist was almost touching his shoulder. So it was a gruesome break. And people in the stands saw it, and they had a reaction. My son saw it, and he totally lost his shit. Like he banged his head on the mat. He was uncontrollable. So I ran out of the stands. I grabbed him. I'm holding him, and I had to turn him to look at me. And I was like, Cash, he is going to be okay. He's going to be okay. And he just stopped for a second. He looked me right in the eyes, and he said, I can't hear the sirens. I can't hear the sirens. So at that point, there was no denying that we had a problem. So I would ask again, hey man, are you okay? And he would say, yeah. And I would say, great. Do you want to talk to anybody about what happened? And he would say, no. And I would say, great. I didn't ask the hard questions, but now I had a problem that I had to solve. I had to get curious. I had to learn how to connect. And of course I connected with my son. You know, we worked out together. We fished together. You know, we were buddies. It was a father-son relationship, but we still had a friendship. But I had to figure out how to connect on a deeper level. So one day I just tried, tell me more. I just said, hey man, you remember that day I got shocked with that defibrillator at the gym, the day my heart stopped and I went down at the gym? He said, yeah. I said, well, tell me what happens. What happens when that thing shocks you? And all of a sudden he said, oh my gosh, Dad, it's crazy. I said, really? Like, do you really pop up off the ground like in the movies? He said, yeah, you do. Like, you bounce off the ground. You came all the way off the ground. And you know what's weird is before they shocked you, you hear this thing hum. It's like this loud hum right before the shock. That was weird because I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was like, holy cow, that sounds crazy. Like, then what happens? He said, well, then there's this beep. It just goes beep. Just like on the movies. Oh, wow. And he got totally serious. And so I was like, well, what happened? When that happened, when y'all heard the beep, what happened? He said, everybody just sort of panicked. Like, somebody started yelling your name. And then I panicked. Like, I started screaming. I didn't know what to do. And immediately I was like, all I could think was, how am I going to tell my brothers? Like, how am I going to tell them what happened? And that's all I could think about was, what are we going to do? And I'd heard from someone else kind of what happened, but I wanted his words. I kind of had an idea. I'm trying to develop trust at this point. I said, so what'd you do? You started screaming. He said, well, Jen was our weightlifting coach. He said, well, Jen grabbed me and she pulled me away from everybody. And I was trying to stay by your side and she was pulling me and she's really pretty strong. He said she was stronger than me. And so I was fighting with her and I didn't want to hit her. It's a girl. So she was just dragging me along. And I was like, so then what happened? Like, you couldn't see me? He said, well, no, everybody made a circle around you and then I couldn't see what was happening. Are you feeling stuck? Overwhelmed? It's like you're fighting against something that you can't even see or name. I've been there, literally. I survived sudden cardiac death and I rebuilt everything. I've mastered the art of controlling the chaos. Now I coach a small group of high performers that are willing to do the work to do the same thing. No fluff, no excuses, we just get results. If you're ready to take back control, apply now at jeffluther.com. This is all can, no can't. So how'd that make you feel? Like, how did you feel? Were you mad? Did you get mad at her? Because she told me the story. She was scared that he got mad. He said, no, I just couldn't see what was happening, but I knew it was something bad. So it scared me. I became so scared. Then I went from Jen pulling me back, and then I wanted to hug her. Like, I didn't know what to do. It's like, wow. So did that scare you then? Like, did that make you more or less scared? He said, oh my gosh, it scared me so bad. And then I heard the sirens. That's when I knew that it was really bad. When I heard the sirens, I never put that together, but when I heard the sirens and they were getting louder, I knew they were coming for you. And so then I was like, oh wow, well that's why sirens bother you now. Then is that maybe what happened with that wrestling match? She said, yeah, when I saw that boy's arm, I knew there were going to be sirens. It just totally triggered me. It triggered when I saw you. It triggered when people screamed your name. Everything triggered, and I knew the sirens were going to come, and I knew that it was bad, and I couldn't hear them. It's like, so does it help now? Does it help to talk about this now? As an aside, I do know from my own experience that when we say things out loud, sometimes, the world feels really big. But when we can say things out loud, sometimes those big, scary things don't feel as big when we get them out in the open. Shame lives in darkness, and bringing light to anything reduces the shame. I do know that. So I was like, man, does it help you now? Does it help you to talk about this? He said, yeah, I've never told anybody about how sirens make me feel after that day. Like, I've been out with my friends and we hear sirens, and sometimes I don't know what to do. It's like, wow. Well, would it help you? Like, if you talk to a professional, would it help you if you could kind of explain to them? Maybe you talk to somebody that helps find out why it makes you scared. Would that be helpful? He said, yeah, that would be really helpful. Are there people like that? I said, yeah, there's people like that. There's people that deal with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders, like our soldiers. They see things overseas when they're in combat and they're defending us. They see things that they have to process and have to deal with. And soldiers are pretty tough people, right? He said, yeah, they are. It's like, yeah, it happens to the best of us. So seeing someone to help process the stress that you have is not that big of a deal. And he said, yeah, I think I'd like to try that. So that's how we connected. That's how we started the path to have our son in therapy, was just that connection, that deeper connection. Nothing changed. I didn't convince him. I just listened. I just asked deeper questions. I had to face my own fear. I was so scared of what my son was going to say to me that I didn't ask the questions that I knew I needed to. My fear of not knowing what to do, or hearing that painful truth that my son was broken, held me back from asking the questions to get the answers that I needed to help him. And some lessons are not that easy. We carry this through life, and I realized that I did the same in my business. I did the same with my clients. I did the same with my employees. And as my business started to decline in 2022, I found things to do. I found things to do in my business. I knew I needed to start asking tough questions. But much like the example with my son, if I asked tough questions around my business, I was going to get tough answers. Things to tell me that pieces of my business were broken. Things that would tell me that pieces of my business were broken and I might not know how to fix. Things that would tell me that pieces of my business were broken and I was responsible for. So I want to encourage you to ask those tough questions. Just start from a position of be the reporter. Be the reporter. Get curious. Detach yourself from the outcome. But go out and find the answers as though you have to take them back to a story or take them back to a newspaper to write a story. Being safe and asking questions that are safe when we know the answer, hearing the things that are safe are not helpful, whether it's family, friends, your personal relationships, your business, your employees. I had to get curious. Remember, I can't hear the sirens. We don't need to allow someone to suffer like that. We don't need to allow our business to suffer like that when we can simply ask those tough questions. If you can come from a place of curiosity, I had to think differently with my son. I had to think I don't know, right? Instead of I know, I had to think I don't know. I had to think servant attitude. How will I serve him? How will I serve him if I don't get curious? I had to think for the greater good. Yeah, it's painful. It was painful to hear that my son was broken and needed help. Further, that he needed help that I wasn't equipped to provide. But I had to think, go to the danger. And we can apply this in our businesses. We can apply this in our personal relationships. We can apply this with our family, just like I did. We can apply this with our employees. But I wanted to make that connection. I had to make that connection to get him the help that he needed. In order to make the connection, I had to ask the tough questions. If I wanted to ask the tough questions, I had to be willing to hear the tough answers. I had to be willing to accept the things that I didn't want to hear, and I had to get vulnerable. Vulnerable is much different than being transparent. A lot of times we say, oh no, you ask me anything, I'll tell you anything. But there's a difference between transparency and vulnerability. Transparency is openness without emotional exposure. Vulnerability is exposing the soft spots of your soul, and you don't know what's going to happen to them. So that is part of this connection for me. I had to get out of my comfort zone. I had to ask those deeper questions, and that's how I got that strong connection. I'm Jeff Luther. This is All Can, No Can't. Look, we're finding the can when people say that we can't, and that's what this is all about. If you have a comment about asking deeper questions, or if you're going through something and you know you have to ask deeper questions, drop a comment below. If you like what you're hearing here, if this is helpful, then please click that subscribe button, click that like button, write a review, pass this on to a friend. Anybody that's going through a tough time, don't suffer in silence. Don't suffer alone. Reach out, and I can help. Jeff Luther with All Can, No Can't. I love seeing you here, and I cannot wait until next time. Thanks for listening to All Can, No Can't. If today's episode resonated with you, remember, it's not about the chaos you face. It's about how you choose to take back control. It's about finding that one small can in the can't you're given and grinding it down. Find your angle, carve your place out in the world, and get the fucking win. Do that by finding what you can do and not listening to what you can't. You choose. Be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Your support helps me reach more people that are ready to embrace the all-can mindset. And it lets them know there's someone that's willing to walk with them no matter how dark the path gets. You can find me on Insta at JDLuther 2.0 and allcan_no-can't. This is where I share more tips, stories, inspiration to help fuel your journey. And until next time, keep pushing boundaries, breaking limits, proving to yourself that anything is possible, even when you're told it isn't. Remember, life's not about can't. It's all can. Go prove them wrong.